the world changed overnight. It started as a whisper in the halls of research labs, a breakthrough so profound that even the most ambitious scientists dared not dream of it. A single neural implant, known as the Nexus, capable of unlocking the full potential of the human brain. At first, it was a marvel: enhanced intelligence, photographic memory, complete control over bodily functions. The sick were healed, the weak made strong, the blind made to see. But soon, the changes became unnatural. People were no longer just human. The first signs were subtle. Thoughts shared without speaking. Dreams merging between minds. A sense of connection deeper than words. Then came the abilities beyond comprehension: seeing through time, moving without motion, bending reality itself. The world's greatest minds stood on the precipice of something incredible, something terrifying. As enhancements spread, society fractured. The ascended, those who embraced the change, became more than human. They no longer feared disease, pain, or even death. But at what cost? The legacy those left behind watched in horror as their world was reshaped by beings who no longer saw them as equals. Then, one day, the first ascended disappeared. Not in death. Not in exile. They simply ceased to be. Dr. Selene Voss, one of the last scientists fighting to control the spread of enhancement technology, discovered something chilling: the Nexus wasn't just evolving the human brain. It was rewriting reality itself. And if the transformation continued, the very concept of humanity would cease to exist. The ultimate question remained: was this the next step in evolution, or the end of everything we know? The world's greatest scientific breakthrough came not in the form of flying cars or interstellar travel, but in something far more profound: the unlocking of the human brain's full potential. It all began with a revolutionary neural implant known as the Nexus, a device so small it could be injected directly into the nervous system. Created by a team of neuroscientists and AI engineers, its purpose was simple: to enhance human cognitive function beyond natural limits. The early results were astonishing. Individuals who received the implant exhibited vastly improved memory, instant learning capabilities, and an ability to process information at speeds once thought impossible. But that was only the beginning. As the Nexus integrated deeper into the human nervous system, it began to activate dormant areas of the brain, areas that had remained unexplored throughout history. Subjects started experiencing hyper-awareness, able to perceive the world in ways others couldn't. Their reflexes became near instantaneous, as if they could anticipate events before they happened. Some reported heightened intuition, even glimpses of the future in fragmented flashes. Scientists initially dismissed these claims as psychological side effects, but the evidence became undeniable when subjects began communicating telepathically. This wasn't mere speculation. Brain scans showed clear, measurable electromagnetic signals being transmitted between enhanced individuals. Words became unnecessary among them. Emotions, thoughts, and even abstract concepts were exchanged in real time, creating an entirely new form of communication. For the first time in history, humans spoke without speaking. But it wasn't just their minds that changed, their bodies did, too. Those with the Nexus found they could regulate their own biology. They could accelerate healing, suppress pain, and even adjust their metabolism at will. The strongest among them could push their physical endurance far beyond what was previously thought possible. Athletes with the implant displayed superhuman feats of strength and agility, their muscles and reflexes seemingly adapting to any challenge. What once took years of training could now be achieved in days. Governments, corporations, and military organizations quickly took notice. The Nexus was no longer just an experimental technology, it was a weapon, a tool that could reshape the balance of power on Earth. The world's elite scrambled to control it, fearing that if the technology spread unchecked, it could lead to a new form of evolution that left ordinary humans behind. At first, it was only the wealthy and powerful who had access. But as the technology leaked beyond the control of its creators, a new class of enhanced individuals began to emerge. Some used their newfound abilities to help society, curing diseases and revolutionizing industries. Others, however, saw themselves as something more than human, and with that belief came a growing detachment from those still bound by their biological limitations. No one knew where this would lead. Was this the beginning of a golden age, where humanity transcended its limits and reached for the stars, or had they unleashed something uncontrollable, the first step toward a future where the definition of human no longer applied? The emergence of enhanced individuals, known as the Ascended, created an irreversible divide in society. At first, the changes were subtle: faster learning, improved health, and enhanced perception. But as more people integrated the Nexus neural implant, the gap between those who embraced the transformation and those who remained unaltered, known as the legacy, became more apparent. At first, the legacy resisted out of fear. The idea of altering one's mind and body at the genetic level was seen as unnatural, even dangerous. Religious leaders, ethicists, and traditionalists spoke out against it, warning that tampering with human evolution could have unforeseen consequences. Governments hesitated to regulate the technology, knowing that any attempt to ban it would only drive it underground. Meanwhile, corporations, private organizations, and the wealthy elite rushed to take advantage of it, further widening the gap between the enhanced and the ordinary. As the Ascended's abilities continued to grow, so did their detachment from normal human existence. Their cognitive enhancements allowed them to think thousands of times faster, solve problems beyond human comprehension, and make decisions with an efficiency that left ordinary people struggling to keep up. Many of them no longer needed jobs or traditional education. They could download entire fields of knowledge into their minds in seconds. Wealth and status became meaningless to them, as they could generate whatever resources they needed through sheer intellect and influence. This shift created an imbalance in power, and it wasn't long before the Ascended started taking control of key industries, political systems, and even the global economy. Human civilization, once based on competition and progress, now found itself in a post-scarcity era, at least for those who were enhanced. The legacy, left behind in this new world, struggled to find a purpose. How could they compete with beings who could outthink and outperform them at every level? Tensions escalated when reports surfaced of the Ascended developing telepathic networks, allowing them to communicate without speaking and coordinate their actions effortlessly. What appeared to be a peaceful evolution soon took on an ominous undertone. Were they still individuals, or were they becoming part of something greater? Governments feared that they were losing control, and some began passing laws restricting or even outlawing the Nexus implant. The result was devastating. The Ascended, seeing themselves as an entirely new species, rejected these laws outright. Some fled to remote locations, forming enclaves where they could continue their evolution unhindered. Others, believing themselves superior, began shaping the world in their own image, disregarding the wishes of the legacy. Then came the first acts of violence. A terrorist group calling themselves the Preservationists launched coordinated attacks against Nexus facilities, seeing the technology as a direct threat to the survival of the human race. The Ascended, who had long viewed the legacy with indifference, now saw them as adversaries. What had begun as a scientific marvel had now ignited the greatest ideological war in human history, one that would determine whether humanity evolved into something new, or if it would collapse under the weight of its own progress. Dr. Selene Voss had always been at the forefront of scientific discovery, but she never expected to find herself at the center of a war between the Ascended and the legacy. As one of the original neuroscientists behind the Nexus implant, she had envisioned a future where humanity could unlock its full potential, not one where society would be torn apart. But as the divide deepened, Selene began noticing something even more alarming: the Ascended were evolving beyond human understanding. At first, it seemed like an expected progression. Their intelligence soared beyond measurable limits, their ability to process information surpassing even the most advanced artificial intelligence. They could control their biological functions with such precision that aging, disease, and even the need for sleep became irrelevant. But then, they started perceiving things that weren't there. Reports emerged of ascended individuals experiencing time differently, claiming to see moments from both the past and the future as if they existed simultaneously. Some of them began speaking in ways that didn't make sense to ordinary humans, describing visions of alternate realities, parallel timelines, and strange, incomprehensible entities. They started writing in symbols that no linguist could decipher, as if they were communicating in a language beyond human cognition. One of the most unsettling discoveries came from a series of brain scans conducted by Dr. Voss herself. The neural activity of the Ascended no longer followed traditional patterns, it resonated at frequencies not found in normal human brains. It was as if their consciousness was being stretched beyond the physical world, tapping into something else, something larger. The turning point came when an Ascended subject named Dorian Hale vanished during an experiment. He had been hooked up to an advanced neural scanner while meditating, monitoring his brainwaves as he attempted to push the limits of his consciousness. Then, without warning, he disappeared. Security footage showed no escape, no movement, just an empty chair where he had once been. Days later, he reappeared in the middle of a Nexus facility, but he was no longer the same. His eyes were completely black, and his skin radiated a faint glow. He didn't speak for several hours, only staring at the scientists in front of him. When he finally did, his voice seemed to echo unnaturally. "I have seen beyond the veil. We are not alone. We were never alone." Dorian claimed that he had stepped outside of time, experiencing an existence where humanity was merely one of countless intelligences, some benevolent, some incomprehensible, and others watching us with unknown intent. He spoke of something coming, something vast and indescribable, drawn to the rising consciousness of the Ascended. Dr. Voss realized with horror that the Nexus had not just enhanced human potential, it had unlocked a door to something else. And now, whatever lay beyond that door, was looking back. The world had already been divided between the Ascended and the Legacy, but after Dorian Hale's return and his cryptic warning, the tension escalated into outright panic. Governments, already fearing the loss of control over the enhanced population, now had a far greater concern. What had they? Awakened scientists, philosophers, and military strategists scrambled to interpret the meaning of Hale's words, but it was what came next that shattered the world's fragile balance. Shortly after Hale's reappearance, the Ascended began displaying inexplicable abilities. Their telepathic networks grew stronger, and some no longer needed the Nexus implant at all. It was as if their minds had evolved past technology itself. Reports surfaced of individuals vanishing and reappearing miles away, or communicating with each other instantaneously across vast distances. Others claimed to perceive unseen forces, feeling the presence of something vast and unknowable, like whispers in the void. At first, these abilities were seen as proof that the Ascended were entering a new phase of evolution. But then, the disappearances began. Across the world, enhanced individuals started vanishing without a trace. Surveillance footage caught strange anomalies: Ascended standing motionless for hours before suddenly fading into nothingness, their bodies dissolving into shimmering distortions of light. Some returned days later, unable to explain where they had been. Others never came back. The most chilling discovery came from a classified experiment conducted by a secret military division tasked with studying the Ascended. A subject named Quinn, one of the first Nexus users, had demonstrated abilities beyond any other recorded case. Under controlled conditions, researchers observed her entering what she described as a higher state of being, her body appearing translucent, as if caught between dimensions. Then, without warning, she screamed. All monitoring equipment short-circuited simultaneously, and the power in the facility flickered. The researchers rushed to her side, but she was unresponsive, staring into empty space with wide, unblinking eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried an unnatural echo, layered as if multiple versions of herself were speaking at once. "We have been noticed. They are coming." Her body convulsed violently, and then she was gone. The scientists were left in stunned silence, the air around them feeling charged with something unnatural. Security footage later revealed something even more terrifying. Just before she disappeared, a dark, shifting shape had formed behind her, flickering in and out of reality. It was watching. The Legacy saw these events as proof that the Ascended had gone too far. They demanded the immediate shutdown of all Nexus technology, fearing that whatever had been unlocked was now threatening all of humanity. The governments of the world were forced to make a choice: stop the evolution before it was too late, or risk facing the unknown consequences of tampering with forces they didn't understand. And all the while, the whispers in the void grew louder. As the world teetered on the brink of collapse, a single question remained: what had the Ascended truly become? The Legacy, terrified of what they could no longer understand, demanded immediate action. Governments, once hesitant to intervene, now saw the Ascended not just as a threat to human society but to reality itself. The Great Purge was declared. Entire cities were placed under lockdown. Any remaining Nexus facilities were raided, their research either confiscated or destroyed. The Legacy viewed it as a necessary step to save humanity, but to the Ascended, it was an act of war. Some of them had already disappeared into their own hidden enclaves, forming isolated communities where their transformation could continue unimpeded. Others, angered by the hostility of their former brethren, decided they would no longer be passive in this conflict. As the first Ascended rebellions ignited across the world, something far more terrifying occurred. The whispers that had haunted them, the voices that had called to them from beyond, finally answered. In several locations, reality itself seemed to crack. Space shimmered like liquid glass, and from these distortions, they arrived. No one could describe what they were: shifting, incomprehensible entities that defied human perception. Some who gazed upon them lost their sanity instantly, while others simply ceased to exist. These beings did not communicate, nor did they show any intention of conquest. They simply watched. The Ascended, now fearing that they had invited something beyond their control, attempted to close the gateways. Their combined intelligence, their telepathic networks, their ability to alter their own biology, none of it was enough. Whatever these entities were, they existed outside the limits of human understanding. The Legacy, witnessing these events, saw only confirmation of their worst fears. The Ascended were no longer human. They were something else, something that had gone too far. Governments deployed experimental weapons, cybernetic suppression squads, and electromagnetic pulses designed to disable Nexus implants. But the Ascended no longer relied on technology. The war that followed was not fought with conventional weapons, it was a battle between two different species. The Legacy, clinging to what humanity had always been, fought desperately to reclaim their world. The Ascended, fractured in their own evolution, struggled between embracing their transformation or resisting the unknown forces they had awakened. In the end, there was no clear victor. Cities crumbled. Populations vanished. The few remaining members of the legacy scattered into underground bunkers, severing themselves from what they had once called civilization. The Ascended, realizing that they could no longer remain on Earth, simply left. No one knows where they went. Some believe they merged into the vast consciousness of the universe itself. Others fear they traveled to places beyond human comprehension where the Watchers, the entities from beyond, had been waiting for them all along. Humanity, broken and defeated, was left to rebuild from the ashes. But even as they tried to forget the horrors of the war, the scars of what had happened remained. And somewhere, in the dark corners of existence, the Watchers continued to observe.